Hello, good evening. Good evening. This is Yang Wang from Greenwich Library. Welcome to our program for investing discussion group. Before we start, let me first give a brief introduction for the speaker, Kristen Jacks. Kristen Jacks is a financial educator, author, and the founder of Money in Your 20s. Kristen worked for Kiplinger's Personal Finance magazine and the Mutual Fund magazine before becoming a writer and a speaker. Her new book on investing is a lively and a jargon-free resource for young adults or anyone new to investing. Kristen is a graduate of Duke University. Hi, Kristen.
Hi,
Now you take over the
Young.
screen.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you to Greenwich Library for all the great and very informative programs they host. Welcome, everybody. So this is the investing discussion group. And once a year, we always cover college because that is a big reason that people invest. So welcome, everybody. This is actually the third season of the investing discussion group. We always choose a theme. We meet once a month. And the theme this year is As You Requested. So Young and I spent a lot of time last year reaching out to people and trying to find out the topics they most wanted us to cover. The economy was a big one. How does the economy, like everything from interest rates and the Fed and things like that, how does that impact investing? Taxes is always a good one. Asset allocation. College is something we always cover. And then fun things, we'll cover things like cognitive biases and the whole behavioral side of investing. So again, we meet once a month. And our past meetings, because the meetings are recorded, you can find them on YouTube. If you've never located Greenwich Library's channel, it's very easy. You just go to YouTube and put Greenwich Library in the search bar, and then a few things will come up that are sort of similar because Greenwich Library, the word Greenwich will come up in different ways. But you're looking for the Greenwich Library logo, which I'm showing you here is sort of like the open book in green with the white tree. And if you click on that, it'll take you to the Greenwich Library channel, I guess you call it. And all of these programs are on there under the video section. And we've had some really, really fun, interesting, popular programs. I think the Psychology of Money is still our #1, but so many different things about like choosing a financial advisor or bonds or stocks or how to get your tax bill down to 0 but still have an income. All of these have been really popular programs. Okay, so today we're doing the yikes, scary $400,000 diploma. We are approaching that number, and certainly anybody with young kids today might end up with a $400,000 diploma. And then planning ahead, so we meet once a month. So next month is all about bonds. And one of the things that really, really bugs me, there's this pervasive myth that bonds are safe. So some people will say like, I'm going to get out of equities, I'm going to get out of stocks, I'm just going to go into bonds to be safe. And yes, that's like the first step in being more conservative. But if you don't understand the bond market and you don't understand all the junk that is out there, then moving into bonds could be like worse than staying in stocks in terms of risk and volatility. So the next meeting is all about really learning like what is a safe bond, how do you find one, and then if you want to go further out on the risk curve to possibly improve your returns, that's great. That's what investors do, but you have to know what you're doing. And so what would be those risks and how do you avoid the stuff that's just absolute garbage? So that's next. In our next session in February is Bond Bombshell. We're just trying a little play on words there. Okay, so welcome everybody. So tonight is the $400,000 diploma. And before we begin, just a quick disclaimer for myself and for the library. This webinar is for educational purposes only. It is not intended to provide investment advice. None of the investments, investing accounts like 529 and Coverdale, or investment strategies mentioned in this discussion group are recommended or discouraged or anything. It's just education. And before making financial decisions, you are urged to consult a wide range of professionals who know your particular situation. Okay, and then also it is a discussion group. I know that can be a little tricky online, but you can always unmute and ask a question. You can always put a question in the chat. You can always raise your hand and then get called on. So please participate, and definitely, especially if you have a question, feel free to like stop the discussion and get your question answered. Okay, so is this your view of the college cost landscape? For people who are just starting out, who really haven't investigated college that much, I find that there's very much kind of this bipolar black and white view. It's sort of like, okay, we're in Connecticut. I know my kid can go to UConn. I know that's going to be under $40,000 a year. And then all the schools that you frequently hear of that are so popular, like Tulane and Penn and Villanova and Duke and Yale and Harvard, like they're all astronomically expensive. It's awful. It's a catastrophe. I'm not sure I'd be that excited for my kid to get into one of those schools, because then I'd have to pay for it. So this is a very common view. And the one thing I invite you to do, if you're concerned about the cost of college, is really sort of embrace the complexity, embrace the nuance. It's so complicated, but that's also where there are actually opportunities. So I would say that one prerequisite for the whole college cost is learning the actual sticker price landscape. Because before you even get into financial aid, before you get into scholarships, athletic merit, otherwise, before you get into financial aid, there's literally just a tremendous difference in sticker price. And starting with, your in-state school, your in-state public school, but then it's sort of like, I used to joke around that in our family, we had this theme like great or state. You're going to get into like a top 20 school, or there's nothing else we would pay for. So then you would just go to a state school. Not that there's anything wrong with that. God knows, if we grew up in Virginia and you could go to UVA or Michigan, and, like if Michigan was your state school, or UVA or North Carolina or one of those, you're jumping up and down over your state school, or schools in California. But the whole great or state thing is actually oversimplified as well, because the sticker price is all over the map. So for example, like obviously UConn is really a great deal if you're in state. But then a lot of people have no idea that there are regional rates, right? Depending on where you live, that state schools nearby will, you're not going to pay the out-of-state rate. You're going to pay a regional rate. So there are all these sort of tricks to learn where, if your kid doesn't want to go to UConn but would like to go to Rhode Island, you're going to get a great deal, right? But you're not going to get a great deal on Penn State, because that's not your region. So these are things to sort of keep in mind. And then also this idea that like public is always so much cheaper than private, that's not true either. So this is something that really surprised me, because at least when I was looking at schools years and years and years ago, Crichton always had this great reputation, but it was private. So it's sort of like, oh, well, private's on, that side of the equation. We're not looking at private, we're only looking at public. But it's really interesting. It's so low cost. It's such a sticker price low cost. This is before financial aid. This is before scholarships, merit aid, anything. Just their sticker price is so incredibly low that Crichton, as a private school, is very similar in price to Penn State if you're coming from out of state. So, right away, I'd say like a prerequisite is just kind of familiarize yourself with what different colleges charge. And there actually are plenty of totally private colleges that have sticker prices in the 60,000, 70,000 range. So you're not in this crazy range. So that I would say that's kind of the prerequisite. And another prerequisite, and this is really where this might just blow your mind, is you just have to embrace this college cost paradox. So US News and World Report did a study, and they named University of Southern California, so USC, they said it's the most expensive school in the country, right? So if they're looking at the 10 most expensive private colleges, and USC is number one, that means it's the most expensive college in the country. Meanwhile, another reputable media company did the most affordable large private colleges, right? And University of Southern California is on their list. Now, how could that possibly be true? How could it be the most expensive college in the country and one of the most affordable? That's bizarre, right? But this is the paradox that just engulfs all of college planning, because the really, really super well-resourced colleges, the colleges that actually attract, like have great endowments and attract like lots of wealthy families, they are just awash in cash. And they're really good at diverting all of those riches to the students that qualify, whether it's scholarships, merit aid, financial aid, a mixture of all. So the schools that can be the most expensive are also the ones that will give you, if they're prestigious enough and if they're well-resourced enough, give you the best financial aid or merit aid or scholarship package. So it's very confusing. A lot of it is word of mouth. I certainly grew up in a household where when my older sister was looking at colleges, my father understood none of this. And he was in a complete panic. We were living in New York City at the time. So my father was just like, you're going to a SUNY school. That's it. SUNY Binghamton. That's it. And my sister was trying to explain to him, Dad, you just don't understand. If I get into University of Chicago, it will actually cost less than SUNY Binghamton. And it was just something he couldn't wrap his mind around. And of course, it turned out to be true, because University of Chicago, great, just like they guarantee to meet the financial need of any kid that goes there. And her education was less expensive at University of Chicago than at SUNY Binghamton. So this is, embrace the paradox. So you can learn the sticker price, but then put that sticker price, sort of off to the side, and realize that that price could change based on your need, based on scholarships, based on merit aid. Okay, so much to cover here. We only have 80 minutes left. So here's like the best use of the 80 minutes as far as I can see. We're going to talk about sticker prices. I'm actually going to show you a lot of prices just to kind of get you used to this range. We're going to embrace this paradox of how the most expensive college could actually, maybe for your family, turn out to be the most affordable. We're going to really get into merit aid. If you're new to this process, maybe you've never even heard of merit aid, and it is the secret sauce for a lot of families that will not qualify for financial aid, in the sense that they won't get anything more than loans, right? So, I sort of, as a US citizen, if you fill out the FAFSA, you'll qualify for a loan, but maybe you don't want loans or anything like that. But in terms of like really knocking off some of that price tag, merit aid is the answer for a lot of families, and it might be totally unfamiliar to you. We'll cover just, the down and dirty on the financial aid, filling out the FAFSA, filling out the CSS profile, what do you do, why do you do it, and, where does it lead? Also going to talk about the net price calculator, because every college on their website is required to have one. And maybe you didn't know that, but it can really give you that, whether or not that school is in a position to be generous. It's really helpful for you to go to their own net price calculator and plug in, your income, your assets, your students' income, assets, things like that. And then they're just going to predict what their financial aid office would eventually offer you. And, that's much faster than going through the whole financial aid process. So it's super great resource. And I think it's kind of fun. It's been fun for me to to fool around with them a little bit, pretend to be different people. What if I had this kind of income? What if I had those kinds of assets? And you really start to see what kind of rises to the top in terms of what are colleges, generous about. And they're incredibly generous when there's low income. But even if you have, I was putting in the net price calculator an income of $200,000, and still it was spitting out a lot of aid. So that's important to know. Then we'll cover the standard college savings accounts, just to make sure you're aware that, we do have these tax advantage accounts to save for college. And then a few hacks at the end, and I'd love for anybody who has some hacks to add to please add them. Like a lot of people don't know that if you say if you buy I bonds through the government, that the interest grows. I mean, the interest, you actually don't pay tax on the interest unless you cash in the I bonds. So technically, I guess they're growing tax free because you're not paying the tax year to year. But then if you use the interest that it has accumulated eventually for college savings, you never pay tax. So that's a really fun hack. And there are other hacks. So anyway, that's what we're doing tonight. This is our best use of 80 minutes. And again, please participate. Please put any questions that you have in the chat. And then actually, Young, are you there right now?
Yes.
When do you want to talk about the resource that the library has, the College Now
Do you
resource?
want me to at the end or beginning? Up to you. I'm flexible. I'm here.
Okay, why don't you just, so the library itself just purchased or subscribed to some new resource. So let me just give Young a few minutes to talk about that. I think you have to go into the library to use it.
Okay, let me share the screen. Okay, give me 1 second. Okay, our library has a database called College Now, but it's also called a different name when you go to the database. Okay, I'll show you. Go to greenwichlibrary.org. There are two ways to access. The first is from Explore, and then you go to Research and the Resources.
And this is just the library's website right now,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yes, and then under Database, A to Z, you see the alphabetical listing. It's called a Brain Fuse Job Now. It's also for a college. From here, you access database. Your Greenwich Library card number is your password. See this database, you can see you can find homework help. Job Now also give you job coaching, real-time interview practice, resume, and job resource. You can have resume assistance, prepare interview, and also help to choose career. So let me.
Oh, I thought there was something specifically called College Now.
Yes, yes. This
Oh,
is,
and it's part of this database?
yeah. So here you can enter your resume from, if you have a resume, okay. See, they have live chat, so you can, from 2 to 11, they will allow you to, they also have homework help.
Okay, but I don't see anything that's specifically for college.
Give me 1 second. No, I'll do it again. It is for high school students, this one. You can submit a resume and then they have help you to do the interview, mock interview. They give you the interview skill and also e-parachute. This one is for students. This you have to create a username. I did it already. So from here, you have some college information. See application, financial aid, admission interview, e-parachute, adult learner. Did you see the? It's time
Okay.
loading. Our internet is kind of slow today because of the midterm in Greenwich. Our library is full of high school students and they have a cell phone, they have a computer, so they have so many devices that need Wi-Fi access. That's cause our internet very slow. So from there, we access to this. So this has the college part.
Oh, okay. I mean, this might be very helpful, when kids are in college and they're looking for summer work, summer internships, things like
Yeah,
that.
so this
Um,
e-parachute helps you to decide what you're good at. You could become they analyze your skill to help you to decide you're gonna study literature or study engineering or study to become a what?
right. So
What type
that's
of
helpful.
people
Okay.
you could
Young,
sort of
maybe we should just get back to the
okay.
slides because
You have a lot of
yeah.
okay. Okay, so you can share screen and overwrite. I can stop and you can.
Oh, okay. Great. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so here we are. All right, so let's just, go through some of these sticker prices. I think the whole like concept of a regional rate is usually new to people. So, like say your kid wants to go to the University of Rhode Island. I mean, obviously the Rhode Island residents get the best deal, the same way the Connecticut residents get the best deal on UConn. But if a Rhode Island person wanted to go to UConn, they get a regional rate. If a UConn person wants to go to Rhode Island, they get a regional rate. This is usually not that well known. So you can see that the out-of-state students, what's considered out-of-state, they're going to pay $51,484. But if you're regional, you're paying $42,554. And this is like kind of, all the tuition, all the housing, all the food. I mean, it's a pretty, it's a pretty nice deal. And if you don't know about the regional rate, you might not have considered it. And certainly if you have friends outside of Connecticut and they don't know that Connecticut offers a regional rate, that's something to share with them. Now, if you're not going to get a regional rate and, like say, your kid wants to go to Penn State, well, now you're getting kind of expensive, right? I mean, state schools are great, but the Penn State, the in-state kids are paying $35,118, but you would be paying $56,264. That's pricey, especially once you consider that, like, as I said before, you start to get into these private colleges that are very reasonably priced. And there are a lot of them. I mean, there's Drew, there's Rhodes, there's so many private colleges that are actually, have kind of a relatively low sticker price. So once you educate yourself, it's, don't be so black and white about like, it's, state or nothing, or it's state or super big scholarship, because there really is like sort of a gradual increase of tuitions over a whole landscape. So, if your kid wants to go to Crichton, you don't have to be so like, no, it has to be a state school, because like Penn State's 56, Crichton's 62, you're so close, right? So this is just something to keep in mind. I'm just going to take a quick look at the chat. There does seem to be. Is the regional rate the same as the New England Consortium that provides lower rates? That's my understanding, right? So some people call it the regional rate. Some say it's the New England rate. I think they're very similar. Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same thing. I think that's exactly right. Okay, so Crichton, at 62,000, not terribly scary. And then okay, so now you're getting a little higher, right? I love Lawrence University. My mother grew up in Appleton, Wisconsin. Many people in her family went to Lawrence University and did very well in life. You're getting a little higher in cost, right? Now we're up to like the 69,000. But as you'll see later, schools like this are very quick to say, oh, I know it's 69,000, but wait, everyone's going to get merit aid, everyone's going to get something. So again, this is sort of like learning how the game is played, keeping an open mind, learning the sticker prices, but then learning how quickly those sticker prices evaporate because everybody gets merit aid. It sounds crazy, but it's true, right? It's sort of like the rack rate at a hotel, like who really ever pays the rack rate? Okay. The University of Scranton. I mean, I really just, I pulled from a whole bunch of different things here. I'm not recommending any of these schools, but just so you know, I mean, Scranton's not far from here, close drive. But they're at 71,000, and it keeps getting worse. But again, there's going to be merit aid and scholarships and financial aid and things like that. the Baylor in Texas. So now we're up at the 73 level. And here's Yale at 87. And then I love how SMU, I mean, they're just in all honesty, they're like, look, by the time you add the books and the transportation and your personal expenses, you're almost at $90,000. Let's just be real. So thank you, Southern Methodist University, for just telling the truth on your website. So yeah, I mean, you're hugging 90,000. Okay, so that's our sticker price landscape. The internet is a fabulous tool. Any school you're curious about, all you have to do literally is say the name of the school and put the word tuition and hit enter. And it literally take you to the part of the school's website where they explain their sticker price. So just familiarize yourself now. You might be surprised. There might be a school that you just love that turns out to be $20,000 less from the get-go, from the sticker price, than like the Yales and Villanovas and Harvards and things like that. Okay, getting back to embracing the price paradox. So like I said, you're going to find that the schools that, on one list will say they are the most expensive schools in America. My sister's school, University of Chicago, is very often on that list. My school, Duke, is very often on that list. Then you'll go to another list that'll say, well, what are the most affordable schools? And they'll take these exact same schools because they are highly resourced, because they have good endowments, because they have a lot of wealthy families that pay full freight. Those schools turn around and give the most generous financial aid, generous sort of quasi scholarships. Some of them, a lot of them, if they're in the top 20, they're not calling it merit aid. They're just sort of meeting whatever need you might have. But they're just in a position to be incredibly generous, right? And other schools aren't. So when I was growing up, I remember that for whatever reason, and this has probably changed, that the rumor mill would say that Duke had wonderful financial aid and Brown didn't. Brown did not have the resources. So same smart kid, same, both wonderful schools. But if you apply to them, Brown will like not give you a good package and Duke will. And I don't know if that's changed. I'm not up to date on which schools, are the most generous, but it's sort of this sort of secret about schools that do not be turned off just by this astronomical sticker price, because a lot of the schools that are super, super expensive are the ones that will turn around and work with you and give you an amazing package and, knock $30,000 off the price, right at the get-go. So embrace the paradox. Okay, so partly what is fueling this paradox is merit aid. And merit aid has become enormous. It wasn't even a thing 20 years ago, but Ron Lieber of the New York Times wrote a book. So Ron Lieber is the Your Money columnist for the New York Times. And he wrote a book, and this book is probably like now $12 on Amazon. And it'll be the best $12 you have ever spent if you just get this book. Ron Lieber spent a very, very long time learning about how to pay for college, how not to get killed. And he really uncovers the entire discounting system that's of merit aid and the schools that give the best merit aid and the whole rationale behind it. And it's really fascinating. And honestly, it'll be the best $12 you've ever spent on Amazon, The Price You Pay for College by Ron Lieber. But what he's trying to get at here is especially the schools that if they're not considered like the classic top 50 schools, they are using money to lure the best students away from the top 50 to their school. I'm just going to take a quick look in this chat box here. Hold on. What have we got? Oh, the library has the book too. Right. I should have thought of that. Okay, good. Thank you, Young. So Ron Lieber's book, The Price You Pay for College, you can just take it out from the library. Okay, so what is merit aid? So merit aid is actually a discounting system, right? So a lot of these colleges, they have their sticker price, and it's kind of a joke, right? Because that sticker price can just be ignored for the very best students. That is the price that the colleges are going to use to then discount off of to make, your student feel incredibly sought after, hey, we want you so badly, we're going to take $20,000 off of this price, to make the parents feel excited, to do all these things. Oh, sorry, I'm getting distracted by this chat. Oh, okay. You have the print version and the audio version. Okay, great, perfect. Okay, so let me just jump to the next slide, because it'll probably, so, we had shown you the price for Baylor, right? So Baylor, if you add together 58,000 and 15,000, I mean, those are two big numbers already. So that's pretty scary. You're at the 73,000 mark. It was basically, no, you're already at 74,000. Okay. Sorry, what? Okay. So, but if you look at the fine print underneath, very few students pay the full tuition sticker price. That's not me talking. That's literally on the tuition page of Baylor University. They don't want anyone to be scared away, right? Very few students pay the full tuition sticker price, right? More than 90% of students receive financial aid, and 84% receive merit-based scholarships. So right away, this 74,000 is not real for most people, even if you don't qualify for financial aid. It's a number that then the colleges can step back from and say, we like your kid so much, her test scores are so good, her grades are so good. And by the way, it is grades and test scores that really, really matter in this situation. We're going to say, take $30,000 off of the price and, please come to our school. So this is a whole universe that's going on here that a lot of people don't know about. And if they get in this mindset that, like, I'm not going to let my kid apply to a private school because I know we can't afford it, then you forfeited the entire, I mean, you forfeited the game before you even started to play. And so many really solid universities offer this discounting system, and it's worth your while, especially if you have young children now. You don't want to put undue pressure on them, but so much of the discounting is based on grades and test scores that there is some way to communicate to a kid that, like, those things really matter, right? That like the better schools, that a school is going to give you money or, want you so much more and lower the price just to have you based on grades and test scores. So I want to make sure I put that in there. It's a discount. Yes, grades, test scores matter. Good. I put that right up front. The whole system is purposely vague, right? So these schools want to give themselves a lot of leeway year to year. They don't like to say, like, if you have, a 4.0, we'll definitely give you a 20% discount. They don't do things like that mostly, because they want to also use it as a recruiting tool where they have some flexibility, because they're looking for different things in their class. They want, a distribution of geography, right? So maybe the straight A student with the 4.0 who lives in Rhode Island is more interesting to, a school in Oklahoma than someone who lives in Kansas. I mean, it's, they're looking for a regional diversity. They're looking for all sorts of kinds of diversity. So it's purposely vague, right? It just gives these schools a way to look at the students that are, that have applied, the students that have shown interest, and then trying to, like, lure them in with good packages, good financial packages. And it's absolutely designed to lure the students away from the top 50 schools. Okay, so right there, Baylor saying this is what we do. Tulane also, right on their website, offers merit and need-based aid programs. All students are considered for the merit scholarships, right? They put it right out there. They don't want you to see this horrible sticker price and then be discouraged, especially if you don't think you would qualify for financial aid. They're like, wait, you'll probably get merit aid if we love your kid. So I can't say enough about how merit aid has just changed the whole system for these really, really good, really solid private colleges, especially if they're not in the top 50, where they turn around and they just give amazing deals if they want your kid. Okay, let me just pause for a second and make sure that that whole merit aid idea made sense. And if you have a question, I'm trying to remember what, from Ron Lieber's book, he calls out a lot of schools just to let you know. I mean, I think Lafayette, Denison, so, if you're really curious, like, okay, well, which schools are doing this hardcore? A lot of the schools in Ohio, he talks a lot about how the Ohio schools are really in competition with each other, the private Ohio schools. So if you're, I don't know that there's a resource on the internet, like if you were like schools that give the most merit aid, I don't know that there would be something like that or it would be that reliable. But in Ron Lieber's book, he really goes out of his way to call out schools that would sort of be a good match. I seem to recall Drexel. There's a school called Trinity, not the one in Connecticut, Trinity in Texas, that is very, very generous with merit aid. So, if this is something, I also think it's a great way when you're figuring out which colleges your kid can aim for. I mean, if your kid, if your heart is set on, your kid's heart is set on, the Yales, the Harvards, the Stanfords, the things like that, that's great. But it's also like a really great consolation prize if you go just under that list and you aim for more of the, Denizens and Lafayettes and things like that, to know that you're going to get this incredible financial reward. I mean, if those schools take, $30,000 off their sticker price, over 4 years, that's a humongous saving. So, it's great to get into a top 20 school, but the cost is astronomical, right? So these top schools offer amazing financial aid and they will absolutely meet financial need, but they have a very different view of, merit aid has nothing to do with financial need, literally nothing to do. I mean, you could be, the child of millionaires, and merit aid is literally just about your academic record and whether or not you would be seen as like someone who would be joining the top echelons of your incoming class. And they're trying to lure you to that school and lure you away from another school. Okay, let me just check the chat. Okay, we're good. All right. Financial aid. I did not even know about the CSS profile until I started researching colleges. I'm not sure we had it when I was going through college, but there's the FAFSA and there's the CSS profile. So let's focus on that. So FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. So like right there, free application, federal student aid. It's telling you that this is you are interacting with our government, right? And it's our government trying to help. When you're trying to foot the cost of college, the government's like, how could we help? Well, if you are super, super, super in need, and you fill out this FAFSA, and the FAFSA confirms that you're, very low income, very little savings, you might, in terms of federal aid, in terms of just grant money, there are Pell Grants. I always get a little confused what the cutoff is. I want to say $70,000 a year. Maybe it's 75. Anyway, it's definitely under $100,000 a year. That if the family income is low enough, then you just get grant money, or the colleges get the grant money, on your behalf to kick in toward your tuition. So those are Pell Grants. Not a lot of people qualify for those, but great if you do. You can only get them if you take the time to fill out the FAFSA. The FAFSA also gives anybody access to federal student loans because the federal government has taken over the whole student loan universe, right? I mean, there are obviously private student loans, from everything from like Discover Card to banks to whatever. But in terms of like the most reasonably priced, like lowest interest guaranteed loans, that's through the federal government. So you fill out the FAFSA, maybe you'll get a Pell Grant, maybe you won't, but you'll at least qualify for student loans and at really, really good interest rates. So that's the whole point. So it's the federal government helping you, possibly with grant money, mostly with just giving you access to a really good loan. To get that whole process started, you need an FSA ID. And so you would go to studentaid.gov and create an ID. And then once you have that ID, then you can fill out the FAFSA. And, for all of these things, honestly, YouTube to the rescue, because you type in FAFSA in YouTube and it'll show you so many tutorials and so many, like, do not stress on like how this process works or what the FAFSA is going to ask you or how to fill it out or anything, because it's all right there on YouTube. Now, when I was going through this whole process, I felt like all we had was the FAFSA, but I guess colleges have become so expensive and so sophisticated that the FAFSA doesn't really drill down to all the things that the private colleges want to know. So the FAFSA also has gotten really, really streamlined, but there's sort of an understanding like that the FAFSA doesn't care about your retirement savings, right? But the CSS profile is much more in depth, and they're going to ask you everything. You're going to have to reveal everything about your retirement assets, the equity in your home, your income, your kids' income. So, and if parents are divorced, I think the FAFSA just kind of looks at the primary parent who gives the most money and the other parent doesn't have to participate, but the CSS profile wants to know everything. So the CSS is separate from the FAFSA, and the CSS profile, I've heard that it takes like 2 or 3 hours to fill out, whereas the FAFSA has become much more streamlined. But my understanding is you really cannot get financial aid at private colleges without doing the CSS profile. So you're just going to have to do it. I was watching a tutorial about filling out the CSS profile, and I heard the most interesting bit of advice. So this was a financial aid kind of expert saying, kind of walking people through, again, YouTube to the rescue. When you go to fill out the CSS profile, she made this point where she said, as you're filling it out, it's all online. It'll tell you the fields that are required and the fields that are not required. And it's a really, really lengthy profile to fill out. And she said something very interesting. She said, if something isn't required, don't fill it out. She's like, when it comes to financial aid, less is more. Only do the fields that you're asked to do and don't do anything else. And I thought, that's really smart. Like, this woman has probably just earned her money right there, because what good can come of giving even more information? And if it's not required, just skip it. It's not required. I thought that was, I'm sure for some people that's going to turn out to be worth its weight in gold, that little gem right there. Just, if it's not required, don't fill it out, just skip it. Okay, so the net price calculator. Colleges are required on their website to have a net price calculator. Okay, check the chat. Okay. A lot of people don't know this, but it comes in really handy, right? I mean, oh wait, there is something in the chat. Let me just take a quick. FAFSA gives you a guide on how to decide who needs to provide info. If it is not necessarily the higher income, can also be primary custody parent. That's the way it used to be. The FAFSA just changed. It used to be the parent who fills it out is the one where the kid spends more time with the parent. And it then changed to the person who needs to fill it out, the parent who needs to fill it out is the parent that is giving more money toward the care of the child, which is kind of an interesting change. Another kind of scary, interesting change which I think could affect marriages, throughout the country. The assets of the step parent have become important. And I think that is shocking that the income and the assets of the step parent, and this is new, became important, because you can imagine that there were people that would not have gotten married, people with like 15 and 16-year-old children that would not have gotten married if they thought it was going to harm their child's access to financial aid, because that's a very, interesting relationship. You get remarried, a step parent, it's like, it's a new family. It's, that person did not think of themselves maybe on the hook for your child's, college education. So I find it very creepy that the step parent is being asked to participate in the financial aid process. But better that you know that than you don't. Anyway, so thanks for that chat. Okay, so on the individual websites, you can go to the net price calculator, and doing those is a heck of a lot faster than the CSS profile. So I just did 2 of them. I went to the Harvard one and I went to the Yale one, and you can do this yourself. You just do net price, Harvard net price calculator. It'll take you right there. They had different questions, which was kind of interesting. Harvard had this question that was like, what is your annual dividend and interest income? And I was like, annual dividend and interest income. Okay, so, right. So they're assuming that I own stocks and bonds and bank accounts that are interest bearing. But I was like, well, that's such an interesting, question. Meanwhile, Yale didn't do that at all. They're like, what are your incomes? What's the equity in your home? What's the value? If you sold your house tomorrow, like what would it go for versus what's your equity and blah, blah, blah. So they ask different things. They're definitely trying to get a sense of your overall financial picture, but they ask different questions and they ask it in different ways. So I thought I tried very hard on the calculators to give a similar profile, and it sort of spit out something different, right? So Yale was going to I was on the hook for less money with Yale and on the hook for more money with Harvard. But even though in both cases I said my income was $200,000 a year, they still gave me some money, which was, a lot of people just assume that if you have any kind of good, decent income, you're going to get nothing. So it's definitely worth your while to like fiddle around with these net price calculators at any schools you happen to be remotely interested in. Okay, so let's talk about these college savings accounts. There's the 529 is the one that's probably the most well-known, the most popular. And interestingly enough, when you set money aside into a 529, it's not federal tax deductible. It's not that kind of an account. It's not like a 401k or an IRA. So the money that you're putting in there is going to be after-tax dollars, but and on the federal level. Now, depending on the state, right, like in Connecticut, we have access to 529 plans where we can get a state tax deduction. But if you're a Connecticut resident, you don't have to use a Connecticut 529 account. You don't have to do that. There are pluses and minuses, especially based on your own income. Morningstar, which rates, Morningstar is sort of a famous company that rates mutual funds and ETFs and all these things. They do a rating of 529 plans, and Connecticut is not considered one of the best ones. So you might find that there are 529 plans sponsored by other states that have a better reputation, lower fees, whatever, and that might offset, whatever you might save in taxes. So these are some of the things to consider. But in any case, when you open a 529 plan, you're using after-tax dollars, but the money in the plan is going to grow tax-free. And when you take the money out, as long as you use it for education, and it's not just tuition, I mean, it's room and board, it's getting that computer that the school is saying that you really need. There are other things there where, like, for example, if you do off-campus housing, you can use 529 money for that, but not if the off-campus housing is any more than what housing on campus would be. So it's not some like unlimited slush fund if your kid wants luxury, high-rise housing. So there are guardrails around, how you spend the money, but as long as they're, used for higher education in a logical way, that the tuition and the housing and the technology and things like that. So then you never pay taxes. People love 529 plans because you can contribute a lot of money into them. You can get other people to contribute money into them. Grandparents can put money in. In terms of financial aid, grandparents usually do their own 529 plan because that doesn't show up on financial aid, whereas the parents' 529 plan does. So grandparents can be saving for their grandchild's college, and it doesn't actually get on the financial aid radar. So this is definitely where you want to consult a financial advisor, a tax specialist, all these things to, beginning with the end in mind. It's like, where is all this going when my kids have to like actually fill out financial aid forms? Isn't it wonderful that like the grandparents' money that got saved doesn't actually ding the parents on financial aid? But anyway, so super, super popular, right? Like, and if you're in a state that has a tax, that recognizes a state tax deduction, then obviously looking at your state plan makes sense to be like the very first stop. But then other people don't necessarily do that, especially if their income isn't that high and the state tax deduction isn't that meaningful. They're going to look for what they consider the very best overall plan. Low fees, super important. What are the investment options inside the 529 plan? So let me just take a quick look because I think I have it here. Oh wait, let me do the chat. Hold on. From my research, only certain family members can contribute to 529 and I bond for education. I want to save for more distant cousins. What options are available? From your research, you're saying that you can't. Okay, so that's interesting because are you saying like you couldn't open a 529 plan with the idea that the beneficiary is a cousin? But I think
Right, that's correct. Actually, it's even going down the line more. It's like the child of my cousin's child. That whole generation is coming up now, and you can only put these things in for certain family members. But I also felt like I saw that there were workarounds, like send it to another person or something.
Well, I mean, definitely on the Coverdale accounts, there are workarounds, but that's really interesting on the 529 because I thought anybody could contribute to a 529. So I'm sorry I don't.
Then I'll do some better research then. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. If there's a 529 plan that doesn't get used, and it's like, so say somebody like, I don't know, they joined the Air Force, they're not going to need all the money, like how you can change the beneficiary. I know, I don't think you can do cousins for 529, but you can for a Coverdale. So that's interesting what you're saying, but I didn't really think that there were restrictions on who could contribute. So I'm sorry, I don't know, but yeah, that's very important. Let me do just briefly this Coverdale. I thought I was being cute. I love Scrabble, but I wanted to, before I introduce the Coverdale, I just wanted to get to this idea of like, once you understand what a game this is, right? The saving for college and the merit aid and the 529 versus the Coverdale and whether or not you use a hack like I-bonds or the Roth IRA. I wanted to point out, this is from a Scrabble game, that, here you have two words and they're both 5-letter words. And one is worth 16 points and the other one is worth 31 points. And that's the way I think about just this whole college saving landscape in general, that if you really learn all of the tricks and laws and nuances and the colleges that want to lure you with merit aid and regional versus in-state versus out-of-state. There's so many nuances. There's so many things going on that if you really learn how to play the game, you could have some amazing outcome you wouldn't normally have. So this is, taking me back a little bit to my childhood when I played Scrabble all the time with my mother. But, this is my quick truth that if you learn to play the game, you could have a much, much better outcome. So let's talk about, so by the way, so here are these, 529 accounts that Morningstar says are the best, the Alaska one, Illinois, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Utah. So Connecticut's not on this list, right? So if you're thinking, I'm definitely going to do Connecticut because I definitely want my tax, the tax deduction, I mean, if your tax is 6%, that's not necessarily a lot of money. If you're only putting in like $3,000, it's not necessarily something that would say like I would only ever use my own state. I mean, it's important, but it's not the be all end all. So it's worth looking at, well, what is so great about these other states' plans? The low fees, the kinds of investments that they're going to let you be in, because 529s are very restricted. You're not going into a 529 and picking your own stocks, right? You're not going to like go in there and like, load up on Tesla and Nvidia. They're not going to let you do that. Or at least thank God not now, but say you had a hunch 5 years ago that Nvidia was the stock, you wouldn't have been able to use your 529 plan that way. You have to invest in the investment options that they give you that are pretty straightforward and fairly conservative. So anyway, you can use this as a resource. Certainly, I mean, like if you like Kiplinger's Personal Finance, wherever you kind of get your best information, the Wall Street Journal, I'm sure they all have their like, what are the best 529 plans? And you can just start from there. But this was what Morningstar was saying. They do a gold, silver, and bronze rating. And these are the only plans that got the gold rating. Okay, but what is a Coverdale account? Imagine what a Coverdale can do for you. The Coverdale is not well known, but among sophisticated investors, it is fascinating, right? So normally you would go into a 529 account. This is what people think, like, well, that's the only thing that's out there for saving for college. But a Coverdale, not so well known, you can contribute, you name a beneficiary. You have to name a beneficiary, right? So you can open an account. There has to be a beneficiary in mind. That beneficiary has to be under 18, right? So hopefully this is something you're starting for like a 2 or 3 or 4-year-old. There are all these restrictions. So only $2,000 a year. The money must be used by age 30. I mean, it seems like such a pain. Why do it? Well, here's the thing. If you are a sophisticated investor, and you open a Coverdale. So I'm just going to tell you a little story here. This is how I would use them. Imagine I have a younger child. I open the Coverdale. I put in $2,000 3 years in a row. Now I have $6,000. Well, I'm also like really, really into different investments. And in 2022, there were all of these SPACs, all of these IPOs, all of these companies came public that had no business coming public. They were not viable enough really to be public companies. But for whatever reason, there was this frenzy on Wall Street and all these companies came public at various prices, $13 a share, $27 a share. And they went up, 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 and then they came crashing down, right? So actually, maybe that was 2021, what was the SPAC craze. I mean, 2022 was like, the penalty. But in any case, all of these companies came public and then they come crashing down. And I had this investing thesis at the time where I said, well, gosh, that was like ludicrous that these companies even got to market, and they certainly were never worth $27 a share. But now the reaction has been so strong the other way, and you'll find this in markets. Markets can be very bipolar. They're too high when they're high, and they're too low when they're low. I thought, well, now all of these companies are being left for dead. They literally have a stock price of $1, but if these companies survive, those are the companies that are going to go 10x. Those are the stocks that are going to go from $1 to $10. So I spent a bunch of weekends just researching these companies, and I was like, some of these companies are going to be okay. Like, they're kind of compelling. They're kind of interesting, even if they're boring, right? So one example would be this company SelectQuote, and maybe you hear them on the radio. SelectQuote just helps people find term life insurance, right? So, the radio ads where they're like, what would happen to your nice wife and daughter if something happened to you? Right? And it's just a service that if you call them, email them, whatever, go online, you're looking for term insurance, they're kind of like this online broker. They're going to match you with an insurance company, and they take some kind of fee, or they've worked it out with the insurance companies. Pretty boring. But so this SelectQuote, and again, I'm not recommending stocks, right? This is just giving you an example of like what people do with Coverdell accounts. So SelectQuote was one of those companies that just got destroyed, and the stock went down to $1. And I was like, well, that's ridiculous, because SelectQuote's a totally viable company and it's probably going to be fine. And, and fast forward today, the stock's at $4, and I think it's going to go up from there. So I just bought a bunch of it, right? And so I'm already, I'm already up 400% because I bought it at $1. Well, a lot of these 529 accounts, you have to go into their very conservative investment vehicles, and they charge fees. And at the end of the day, I think the average people make on 529 accounts is only like 6% a year. Well, if you have a Coverdell account, you can invest in anything you want. You can invest in individual stocks. So if you feel like you have a really good sense about the stock market or individual stocks or a real estate deal or any, if you know what you're doing, you can use your Coverdell money to go into that investment. And so if I, had my Coverdell and I had my $6,000 in my Coverdell, I would have probably put 2,000 of the 6,000 into this SelectQuote. And it would already be, the 2,000 will have become 8,000. So this is, not a very well-known investment vehicle, but it's totally legitimate. It's totally true. So it's for people who really kind of know what's out there. I mean, the financial world will say you can't beat the market, right? They will say, like, you just go into an S&P 500 fund. You'll never be able to do this on your own. You'll never pick a winner. But I know from personal experience that is not true for really, really sophisticated investors. And people are doing sophisticated things all the time, and certainly much more sophisticated than what even I explained. So another thing in a Coverdell account is that if you are someone who understands real estate investing, and there's like, you want to participate in some kind of real estate deal, you can use funds from a Coverdell to invest it into real estate. Now, this usually requires having a self-directed Coverdell account. And that's a whole other universe, right? So people who are very sophisticated, for example, like they have an IRA and they know how to roll their IRA into a self-directed IRA, and they can actually use their own retirement funds to go into real estate deals. A lot of people don't even know that that exists. But for the people out there who are really sophisticated, especially if you're a grandparent and you're going to start, putting money into a Coverdell for a grandchild that's, 1, 2, 3, you have 2,000 a year that can be like, $10,000 after 5 years, and then you have access to some kind of great investment. I mean, that could be a super, super winning strategy. Don't just take my word for it. There are all sorts of podcasts about this. If you have some favorite podcast, mechanism you listen to, go into their search function and just put in Coverdell, and you'll be listening to these very, very smart investors talk about how this is kind of a secret weapon for the super sophisticated. So I am a huge fan. And yeah, so 529, super safe, great savings vehicle. But if you've never thought of the Coverdell, give it a look. Okay. So college saving hacks. I would love for anybody who has a good hack to share it, because it's something like I didn't even know about the I-bonds college saving hack until a few years ago, even though I've been studying this for years. I've been studying money for years. I worked for Kiplinger's Personal Finance. I've, passed the the FINRA exams. I've done all of these things. And I was like, how did I not know this? But for example, if you buy I-bonds, and you just can do this online, right? This is just government. I mean, these are the government bonds that you can easily just buy online. As the interest grows on an I-bond, one of the things I like about it, even if you're not saving for college, you buy these I-bonds. If you happen to be someone with a high income, all of the interest that's accumulating, you're not paying taxes on that until you until you cash out the bonds. So the interest money is growing tax-free, which is amazing. But then when you do go to take out the cash in the bonds and get the interest, if the interest is used for education, for qualified education expenses, then you don't pay any tax at all. Now, there are caveats here, right? So of course there are income limits. So this gets a little confusing, like, how are you doing this? Like, who's investing in those I-bonds? Like, whenever there are income limits and people go, well, I can't do it because there's an income limit. I'm like, could your sister, like, who do you know who could, like, you give them the money and they buy the I-bonds? I mean, there are always ways around these things. So I just think, it's just something to think about. And then the Roth IRA hack, this is going to sound like totally nuts, but there have been families where, they have a baby and then they have their baby go into modeling, right? Just so that they can use the revenue from the modeling to open a Roth IRA, because a Roth IRA has to be opened with earned income, right? So now this child, it's just a baby, has done some modeling. The modeling money is earned income. The earned income qualifies so that the Roth IRA can be opened. And that turns out to be the best savings vehicle for college ever, because it's growing tax-free, and it doesn't matter if it's used for education expenses, but when you go to access that money, you pay no tax on any of the gains. And even if you're not doing it with a super young child, even if you're doing it with a teenager that has like been babysitting or lifeguarding or mowing lawns or who knows what, walking dogs, whatever, you can, that kid can be earning money at age 14, 15, 16, going into a Roth IRA that is growing tax-free. And then the money can be used tax-free when it comes out. Doesn't even have to be for education. So these, a Roth IRA is basically mimicking everything that you would want from a college savings account, but it's even better because, sort of like the Coverdale, a Roth IRA can invest in anything, right? So it's basically like a brokerage account. Well, I shouldn't say it's not anything, because you'd still need to roll it into a self-directed special account if you wanted to get into real estate deals and things like that. But if if say this were a bunch of years ago and you happened to be an Elon Musk fan and you were really into Tesla stock, or you saw AI coming and you got into NVIDIA, I mean, you do that inside a Roth IRA, like, you're making a ton of gain and never seeing any tax consequence. So these are just some of the hacks that make sense. And let me just take a quick look at the chat. If anybody has any other college hacks, I would love to hear it. I do not see any in the chat. But anyway, so that's all I got for tonight, but please join us next month for the Bond Bombshell. So that's learning all about bonds. Are great. I love bonds. Investing in bonds, very important, very prudent. But do not subscribe to the myth that bonds are safe, because some bonds are safe and some are very, very, very unsafe. Let me take a quick look. Can you use a Roth IRA for inherited funds? Nope. Nope. No Roth IRA for, it has to be earned income, right? But, obviously there are ways around this. So like if a kid is inheriting money, but that same kid has any kind of job whatsoever. And by the way, especially like if someone in your family runs a business and they can hire, I mean, people do this all the time. Like if you run your own business or your brother runs his own business, they're hiring your kid for whatever. The kid came in and filed. That's earned income. You can give that kid money and that kid can go into a Roth IRA. Certainly families that run their own family business do this all the time. Hopefully in a way that like kind of makes sense, can't give your kid like a $30,000 salary. I think that you'd get caught. But yeah, so no, Roth IRAs only earned income.
I just got
Yeah.
so tired all of a sudden. Like,
Sorry, what?
I don't know why I'm so nervous for.
Oh, I don't think that was for us. All right. Anyway, so next month, join us for the bond bombshell. Learn about the bonds that are safe, the bonds that are not so safe. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Enjoy. This is going to be online. If you want to review everything that was said, it will be probably next week. It will be on the library YouTube.
Thank you so much.
I will send the link. I will send the video, the login and the passcode to you later this evening, because after we finish recording, it take a few minutes for them to process.
Oh, okay, great.
I always do. I always send them the video.
Oh, I know you do. I know you send it to me. I didn't know you send it to everybody else.
Everyone who registered.
Oh, great. All right. Well, thanks everybody.
Thank
Have
you.
a good
Thank you,
night.
Kristen. Thank you everyone
Thank
for coming.
you.
Okay. Bye-bye.